Let's talk herd. Hi, Sandra.
Hi,
Thank you
how
for
are you?
coming.
Oh, so glad to
Yeah,
be here. Thanks.
yeah, it's great to speak to you. And your messages that you get from the animals they're just fabulous. They have so much vibrancy and so much spirit in them. And yeah, I'd really love to hear about the story of how that started and how they came through, how long you've been doing it.
Well, um, you know, I think a lot of people make the assumption that if you hear animals or see images from them or understand them using your sixth sensory abilities, that you did that from the time you were a child. And that was not the case for me. I was doing body work on a horse 10 years ago, and this really deep voice just boomed loudly in my head, and I just heard, "This hay is crap." And about 5 minutes later, a woman came into the barn and announced that there's mold all over the hay. So it started in a very glamorous way like that. And a few weeks later, probably was that pivotal moment. A horse named Emelian uh, kind of shook me into, uh-oh, what is this? By saying, when the barn closes at 4 o'clock, we can drop the facade and be our true
Wow.
selves. We hear the birds speak, the plants
Mm.
speak, everything speaks. And horses are always sending love to humans, you just don't know it. And I thought and didn't say, I wonder where they get the energy from. And he said, we leave our bodies to connect with all that is because our frequency gets lower being in a body.
Mm.
So I said, do all horses do this? He said, pretty much, but we find it more difficult when our human is going through a hard time. So it started with that. And then, 3 years of, okay, hearing horses, and the human didn't hire me, I couldn't touch the horse and do body work on them. And the horses would be like, you said you were going to help me. And I'm like, but I can't. So what do you do with that? A lot more proof, a lot more, something, and that's the horse saying, this is what's wrong with me that no one can discover. A lot of those kinds of things have to come up so that you, the hearer,
Mm.
believes. At least if you're me, and you're living left brain analytically,
Yeah.
and then the horses just turn your whole world upside down and crack it wide open. So it started like that.
Wow. So what were you doing with horses before that? What led up to that? Did you have your own horses?
No, only in my mind I did. So what I was living in Westchester, New York, surrounded by about 65 different farms and barns. And so I was using um, photopuncture and light therapy. So photopuncture is doing acupuncture with light, like red light, 650 nanometer red light, on acupuncture points. And
Mm.
also, and light therapy is applying red and infrared light pads to work on tissues. So that's what I was doing, kind of working the hardware and the software of the horse's body.
Okay.
So at least I could be working with them and near them, even if I didn't have a horse. And so I got to hear from a lot of other people's horses. And I was
Mm.
completely unbiased. That was the good part. I had nothing to unlearn because I didn't learn any way to be with horses that then
Mm.
would discover
Yeah.
I couldn't use anymore. I just started from scratch, and the horses told me. The horses shared what needed to be shared. Um, I mean, that first horse, Emelian, uh, basically said, why are you wasting your time with all this equipment? Why don't you just run energy? The horses are waiting for you. and
Wow.
he said, when I thought I was making this up, I came back to the barn really like, that's it. I made it up. And he headbutted me out of his stall into the aisle and said, you bought into the illusion again. We need you. I had no idea what it meant. I'm like, okay, just believe the horse. There's more. And then he started, I would sit outside his stall and then was yawning and an occasional burp. And he said, the yawning is sadness. You're releasing it. Your heart is injured from believing others or not knowing who you really are. And the burps are anger that you've picked up or that you carry. There wasn't many burps. There was a whole lot of yawning. And it just evolved from there. When I moved down to Florida, I was able to meet a lot of horses. And then on one day in particular, September 28th of 2015, I sat in a barn of what it turned out to be very evolved horses that didn't have to work on releasing trauma. Their voices were so mind-blowing. It sounded like Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle and the Dalai Lama and all the great thought leaders. I'm like, this came from a horse. And then 4 months later, some of the same things that horse told me came out of the mouth of the Dalai Lama. And I went, okay, consciousness is.
That's amazing.
It just is. So, yeah, it evolved from there. The horses drove the bus from the beginning, where they said, you have to ask pointed questions, put them down on paper.
Yeah.
So, they're remarkable beings. What they've continued to share, kind of opening up more and more. Yeah.
Did you have a spiritual path up until that point? Were you interested in spirituality or new age thinking, or do you feel like you had a preparation to become receptive to the horses or the animals' voices?
I think it started maybe a little late for me at about 32. So I had exposure to energy healers, to starting to see energies behind my eyes, to realize that I am not my mind. The real basic stuff. But there was no awe and there was no wonder in my life.
Okay.
When the horses came into my life, that all changed. A sense of purpose and connectedness. I always wanted to be a writer, and I never felt like I had anything that was original enough to say. And I was so mind blown by the levels at which horses work, their complex role here on the planet. They gave me stuff that I figured if I was so blown away, then someone else might be too.
Yeah.
Then it was worth writing about. Then it was worth sharing. And I would never call myself an animal communicator. I took classes, but the whole point is practice until you get to the point where if someone comes to you with an end of life decision, you are hearing from the animal. It is, you definitely have to get very comfortable with not having your agenda, not having your beliefs get in the way. So it is a spiritual practice, for sure, connecting with an animal and maintaining neutrality. Getting out of the ego and the thinking mind and the agendas and the beliefs to be, as horses love, harmonious and neutral. As they say, they flow with anything that comes up, allowing it to pass through them. That's the work. That's the work.
So is it ever difficult to put into words? How do you actually perceive it? Is it always a voice, or is it sometimes maybe pictures or feelings that you have to interpret in some way?
Well, look, we all have our clair ability menu, right? Where we may have a dominant one. So I may hear But it starts out with a pic. It starts out with an animal appearing behind my eyes. So there's a visual, and that's when they come through, like when horse consciousness comes through, or once in a great while, an animal I've never met, a German Shepherd with cancer named Dax from where, I think Texas. Sometimes things will come, but they start with a visual. Feelings. Well, how can you not be clairsentient? We're energy beings. So if you are sensitive to the energies of others, it's going to play a role in being sensitive to whatever, a non-human is feeling as well as a human. So yeah, it's a mix, I'd say, of of hearing, clairaudience, clairvoyance, and clairsentience. And sometimes you get that instant knowing, that paracognition where you just go, or the horse or the animal will show you, this is where my pain is. It starts here and runs down my back. And you'll just get that instant knowing hit as well. So the whole point for all of us opening up to these abilities is to not expect to walk around like Dr. Dolittle, where you just go blah blah, and all the animals are talking, and you never have to, it's just constant and unquestionable. I think, at least for me, it keeps you really humble because you can't turn it on and off like that. When I work with a client, I always have them ask permission of their non-human partner and report back exactly what tiny little responses they get, because that's that partnership between them and their animal partner and stuff, and respecting the non-human's wishes. Doesn't happen without that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really important. Yeah. So you would say that some horses are that they go more into a spiritual perspective, and others are more physical. Are they quite different in their messages?
Oh, I am so glad you brought that up. Because they're so different. I mean, that's the beauty of it. It's like this, I literally, here, I'll just read you a little quick blurb where, I really heard from extremely evolved horses. And then here's a horse at the same barn, entered the barn, and he said, I've met Honeybee and Jono, and they are very wise. Most of us, the bulk of horses who are loved, are not quite there yet, but we're not clueless either. We're somewhere in the middle, waking up like many humans. Energies affect us a lot, and we are learning to separate ourselves from constricted energies in people that we don't yet know how to release. Some people are easy to be around. They are open, real, not afraid, and they feel their hearts in their chests. It goes on and on and on, that I am content to be on a path of growth, learning to work with, move, and release energy, and how they moved away from the show life, which was just going backwards into darkness. So, and here's another one. Here's Will. What I want is what every horse wants. Freedom of mind for all, equality-based partnership with humans, freedom to be with other horses, ability to explore off premises, soft moments with humans who have been gentled. Everything else is all energetic. Oh, and by the way, clearing the barn energetically on a regular basis helps us all. So you get the horses that are feeling their way, they're working through trauma, they're discovering what it means to be a horse again, because they were in that arena, if you will, where they were not allowed to be free or with each other or on the land, So they are just as unique in terms of where they're at, and they don't compare. They never compare or judge themselves for where they're at.
Yeah.
A good lesson for us when we want to be more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow, it just sounds so genuine, the words as they're coming through, and it resonates really deeply, with just how they feel that they are communicating. That's amazing.
Oh, the stuff that they do, it's, oh.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say their most common message for people is? What do you hear most coming up most often?
Mm. Okay, the most common thing that I hear, because horses are, they have a complex role, as these are their words, not mine, where they are committed to partnering with humans in our spiritual awakening, and they are simultaneously, hold on, traveling to other dimensions where they learn. So they're out of their body as much as they're in it. So what they say about humans is, because we respond to every thought and emotion, we are spurring people to look deeply at themselves and the beliefs that they need to be a certain way. And horses are here to say, look, the more you slow down and stay in our presence, the more your awareness blooms, and you can not become like us, but become more the authentic you.
Mm.
Horses keep saying, we're not asking you to be different. We're just asking you to see where the blocks are that you put up out of fear or erroneous beliefs about yourself. And if you bring them down, everything else falls so beautifully into place.
Wow. Yeah.
So that, and slowing down. Because especially since COVID, I think we've all seen that the to-do takes so much longer as things break apart, and we have to work harder even just to purchase something. So horses keep trying to pull us into the be.
Yeah.
Stillness without expectation is where all the magic happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a challenge for us to say, okay, it's time for stillness. This can wait until tomorrow. Right?
Yeah, it really
So
is.
that's probably, then one other thing. The other thing that they say, other than slow down and sit with us, is pull away from mass messaging. Because a horse said, awareness, if you will, happens one person at a time. But you can't hear your own voice if you've been programmed, if you are on autopilot. So stepping away from the mass messaging is huge, because we humans are bombarded by voices that are not only not our own, but we believe the voice and they got the message from someone else who perhaps we would not believe. So horses are always driving us toward the authentic.
That's so true, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they work on many, many levels, they say.
Yeah, I think that inner guidance is really important for all of us, especially when you're working with horses, because there's so many factors for everyone. When, there's just so many factors in the horse world that you have, the only thing that you really have in your relationship with your horse is that inner guidance. And that's really what it's about, isn't it? Learning how to listen to that and to know that if you don't feel good, then that's your inner being telling you that you're not seeing this the right way, and you need to find a different way to look at it, and not go and ask a question on Facebook, but listen in. And it's just so fundamentally important.
I had a horse tell me this one. I think you would like this one. A horse told me that when he acts out, it is when he catches a human in a lie to themselves.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Can't hide. I've had horses call out their human for going out and partying at night.
Wow.
And what that does to their energy field.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, yeah. You can't hide. If you have a horse, honey, you can't hide.
No. Yeah, I mean, one of my youngest one, but she's so sensitive. And if I come to her, if I'm just even a bit grumpy or a bit impatient, she mirrors that straight back. It's just unbelievable how sensitive she is, and yet she can be incredibly sympathetic and compassionate as well. But she just, yeah, she's so present, and yeah, just amazing. And how would you, do you feel that horses are different from other animals, or all animals have a particular role to play on Earth? How do you feel they fit in?
From what I've learned, from what they've said to me, you learn different things from different species. When you look at companion animals, and we know how dogs teach us unconditional love, and cats free us from the prison of our mind, driving us out of that incessant chatterbox. So a cat will stare you down, and the question is, okay, where is my mind right now? Horses, whales, and elephants, as I have been told, are massive light workers, massive energy healers, movers. Oh God, how do I approach the horse? Here's a good example. So we know that behaviorally, right, how they respond to every thought and emotion. Energetically, this is what most horse people probably don't know. They think their horse is mouthy. They're nipping the junk out of your energy field. When I have real damage, as I do to my feet, the horses come and they nip around my feet. And I heard, oh my goodness, what did you step in? And it wasn't poo. It was something energetic. They are not, quote, being sassy or irritable or mouthy, but few of you know that yet. They're always working with energy. Very often you'll see your horses, as you probably do, arrange themselves in sacred geometry. It's always to move and clear energy. And in those moments when they suddenly turn their butt to you, you're always thinking that it is in search of a butt scratch. But what they've told me is they are working on your first energy center, your chakra. So they're always working with energy to release it, to unstick it, to clear it, and to replace density with love, with high vibrational energy. I mean, I've also tuned into horses that are trying to fix broken institutions, specifically the institution of horse racing. And so I tuned into the Santa Anita Collective when they were dropping on the track. They were up to 32 in a short period of time, and they chose those bodies because they knew they would not withstand that much abuse. But they were committed to shedding light on the abuses in the industry. I've had horses tell me that they're always clearing what has no place in the new earth that's emerging. So they're taking on and clearing bitterness, judgment, fear, anxiety, hatred. They're trying to change human perception so we understand that all is fluid, including what we think of as our form, and that we are, like they, not imprisoned by our bodies or time or space. Now, these are big concepts that most of us may be able to get in our brain, but can't necessarily put into practice, where we go, okay, I'm going to astral travel right now, because we're buying into the density of our form. It's a really hard belief to break. But the horses are working on us, mostly at night, when there is no conscious resistance, right? I literally have heard from one horse in particular telling me about how they travel interdimensionally. They travel to, up to the 20th dimension, and what takes place in the different dimensions, because change first appears in other dimensions before it manifests here on the 3D plane. What I didn't know about, that many horses have also mentioned, is a rescue horse network. These are horses that have been rescued and loved, and they're paying it forward energetically. So helping horses and humans by working together to pay it forward. That one blew my mind, right? As soon as they're at a place where they're not overcome by trauma, and they can, and they know when they're able to, they pay it forward by doing energy work on others.
Wow.
Yeah, I've even had some tell me that they are light workers along with light beings, and some, it's just, it runs the spectrum. It runs the spectrum. It's very beautiful.
Yeah. It's such a relief to hear, you talk about that like that, because I've really felt those things, and especially when you say how they're always in energy and they're always, working with energy, because that when I tune into that energy, that's what I feel. And it is all energy. It's all on that level. And it's very, I don't suppose you can say it's physical, but it does feel very physical. It's very real, in the body, and it's not something that's, you could say it's imaginary, because it could feel imaginary, but on the other hand, there's all these symptoms, and you can feel it. And especially because I've been doing this since my sister's accident. I started doing some, what I just called it, herd assisted healing, because we all come together as a herd. I kind of felt my role at the beginning was channeling what the herd were doing, like not channeling it, but just putting it into words. So it's still happening, it's not like but I'm just interpreting it. And I felt that when I spoke it out, then it almost makes it like I can share it, So if somebody wants a healing or for themselves or their animal, we'll invite them in. They're not there physically, but we invite them in. And then the horses just do their work. And but it's always this flow. It like goes between tuning into the pattern, like the energy pattern of the person, tuning into that and sort of working with that. But then what I love about it is there's always this going back out to the herd energy, and it's always embracing, and it's always loving, and it's always just so much love and support and embracing. And then maybe going back into what you could call the path of the solution, maybe, but it's like they use pressure, and they use so many different amazing ways of where I'm trying to kind of think of some of the things that I've felt. The way that, like, they have this thing that, like a mineral rich bath of energy that they'll soak someone in, or they'll do, or maybe one horse will have a particular gift. Like there's a grey horse, a white horse that I have, Marie, and she's quite submissive and quite low down in the herd. And she will do, like you say, it feels like she's going right up into the dimensions, and she's becoming this light healer who's just incredibly powerful. And it is. So it's just amazing to hear you saying that, because it's like, wow, it's just validation, isn't it? Because we just, yeah, a lot of the time we're just not in that world.
You know what? I think that's what the words are for. The words are to validate. Right, like everybody will experience it differently, but they're all pieces of the puzzle. You know, you may perceive this. So we give them certain things to look for. Like if your horse is just standing in the stall, hanging his head, don't assume that the horse is depressed. More often than not, they're traveling. I've literally had a horse tell me he was doing it all the time, working with horses at the moment in Tunisia and Morocco, helping them with the energy and with physical stuff. I'm like, and he lifts his body, asks permission, jumps back in, and he always hurts because he lands hard with a thud and massage. Ooh, that feels so good. So, you know, if you let people know, the nipping is energetic clearing, not a sassy horse. If you know, whether they press their muzzle and turn away and yawn. I mean, I remember when a horse first put her muzzle on my throat, I'm like, oh. And it was press, turn away and yawn, walk around. It was sweeping, right? And when I post those things, a lot of people say, yes, my horse does that all the time.
Yeah.
So when people become more familiar, like you feel things, you may not need the tangible contact, but some people do. Right, so horses have their own ways, and I think they have a few things in their toolbox that, you know, depending on who they're working with, or so what you're able to pick up is stuff I couldn't pick that up. It really allows for everyone's perception, everyone's.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it is like you say, though. It's very. It just comes, you receive it, so you can't force it. You're just in that right place at the right time, and you're just open, and it just comes to you. It's not that you can't make it consistent necessarily, and you can't say that, you know, it's going to be every day or it's going to be at this time. It just, you know, it happens when it happens, and you just have to kind of, yeah, that's how it is. It happens, and you just have to kind of, yeah, that's how it is. But what you're saying about them, how they,
I'm glad to hear you say that.
yeah, yeah, because I find sometimes it goes in waves. Like I'll have quite long periods where I'm not really in that energy place that much, and then it'll come back and it'll be really intense for a while, and then it's just. You know, so yeah, I've kind of learned just to not worry about, you know, when it comes and when it doesn't, or that, you know, that I could be doing this more, because it's not like that, is it? You're just taken in when you're needed, I suppose.
That's ego.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And it won't let us become dependent on it for our self-definition. If it were there all the time, right, you would think of it as who you are. You know, this is, and then when it's not there, you're like, oh, okay, it's not a crutch. It's not a crutch. It's a gift every time that it comes through or that you feel it.